And as Lydia was then saying about the high levels of those with gang involvement have actually been victims of crime, over half the prison population in the UK have also had a parent in prison. So that is something that also me and Lydia do a lot of work on, is educating on both perspectives, not just like obviously having the victim story is so important. So educating on the victim story, but also educating on the perpetrator's family's perspective as well, and how imprisonment can affect perpetrators' families as well. A little bit about my own story is in 2017, I was 7.5 months pregnant at the time. I got married. And just 4 days after my wedding, my then husband was arrested, remanded, and sentenced to a minimum of 9 years in prison. It was the most isolating, traumatic experience of my life. And it was like society just didn't understand what I was going through. I felt that when he went away, I felt like my voice went with him, that I wasn't able to speak. I was judged even by friends, by family, even though his crime had absolutely nothing to me and came as such a shock to me as anybody else. It was like I was being judged, like I'd done something wrong, even by friends. I'd become isolated away from friends, from family. And to top it off, the media also got involved. So there was that press attention, that intrusion as well. And while I was pregnant as well, then when I had my son was literally just a few days old when there was a knock at the door. I was waiting for the health visitor to arrive at the home, and I opened the door expecting it to be the health visitor, but it wasn't. In fact, it was 2 journalists from a newspaper who in the newspaper the next day ran that I'd given birth to my ex-husband's son. And that then just escalated it further. I felt that I had nowhere to turn. I felt that nobody understood what I was going through, that in the end it got so bad that I thought that the only way out of this was to try and take my own life. And I got to a point one day where that was actually actively in my mind. It progressed from thoughts of I wish my life would have ended before this point to I want to end my life. And one night I was set to do it. That was it. I was going to do it. And my baby was so tiny. He was still only a few weeks old. And I remember him crying in the Moses basket next to me. And I just had this wave of guilt that came over me. And it was like, you have to find something positive from this negative situation because your babies need you. And from there, I knew that I had to find the purpose in this pain. I had to find something positive to take from it. And it was then at that moment I decided that I was going to go to university. I was going to go to university and I was going to study criminology and psychology to try and gain answers to questions that I knew I was never going to find anywhere else. So I went to university. I then found out about an organisation called the Prison Advice and Care Trust, where, as I said in the beginning, I've started been volunteering with them now for over 2 years. And I've worked on their helpline supporting prisoners' families. I have worked in the court service supporting defendants' families through trial. I've also been an ambassador for them, speaking at big events like the Prison and Probation Service Conference and events at the Old Bailey, just because I truly believe that this was my purpose in life, that it was my pain had a purpose and I had to go through what I did to be able to help express what other people go through who have been through that experience, and to help other people that are going through it know that they are not alone. I have now completed my degree. I actually got a first in August in my university degree, and I've joined with Lydia and we create these workshops now to actually educate on both perspectives. And we do a lot of work in the school system as well. So educators are also aware now of the impact that imprisonment has on families. Because my own experience, we had to go through a different school gate. There was no support system at all. And yeah, like Lydia said, the support system is so important. Like once I then got myself back on my feet and I was able to get counselling, that support was so important. But yeah, so that's how me and Lydia came together, and that's my story. So I myself was quite lucky. I didn't grow up with any ACEs in my house. Oh, I grew up with one because my parents were separated, but my children unfortunately have gone through that experience of parental incarceration, and it's had I've now spent the last 4 years rebuilding that resilience into my kids, where we're now at a really happy, positive place, and it's amazing. And it's amazing. Thank you for listening. So I'm able to give back. Thank you.
And again, if anybody wants to ask Kerry any questions or any comments or thoughts, I'm sure she'll be happy to answer. Anybody got anything to say in regards to Kerry's story?
I'd like to come in. Again, I mean, you know, Kerry, I've heard your story. Then there's something different about the way that you're telling your story today, Kerry. And those of you, I can see Pauline's nodding. So Paul's heard your journey, but there's something different today. And I'm gonna say from my perspective, what I'm seeing is this real strength and ownership of the story. And I think that kind of relates to what you said about the children, which is that you're in a really good place. And I think that's the first time I've heard you say it, Kerry. That's what's different. Yeah. And I can see that in your face. Yeah. It's making me a bit emotional because I can see that you have gone through your place of truth, your place of 100%. Ownership. Yeah. Your place of ownership, and now your transformation. Yeah. So, and I think, you know, Kerry, it's so easy to forget about the perpetrator's family. Would everyone agree with that? Yeah, I know that I've not always thought about, I've always think about the victim, but just listening to your journey, you know, and it always stays with me when you talk about, you know, your baby crying, and that being the point that brought you back to a space of, okay. Yeah, and I think most of us, and you know, and I mean this respectfully, as women, have kind of been in a space of where we're feeling overwhelmed and in a place of despair. I know I have been. So, you know, your story, your journey really resonates today with me, and to just want to say thank you, Kerry. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you.
It's okay.
Hi guys, yeah, I think we've got like a couple of more minutes. I think we've just got last slide on the presentation just to show you, which would just be, I think, the letter exercise. So we're going back to the beginning of the workshop. We asked you to write down somebody who means a lot to you, a friend that you would like support if they would ever go through anything. So did everybody write down a name of somebody, of a friend that means a lot to them? A parent, friend. Yeah, excellent. So what we want you to do is we want you to take a bit of time coming from your heart of empathy and try to write a letter to your friend as a letter of advice. So for instance, if your friend has had a child who has been arrested and locked up because they've been carrying a knife, what advice would you write to that friend? And it's really gearing towards the role that we're doing as parent and parent champions as well. So it's really just a reflective experiment or exercise for you guys to try it out. And it's not something that we want you to do today, but just over the next week before we come back to the next session, if you can just try and write a little bit of that story and just try and find that place of empathy to support another parent that would have been going through that scenario. Is that clear? Yeah, thank you. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, Lydia.
Yeah.
So we're writing a letter to a friend who's like gone through something traumatic with their child or in their self, or
ideally
traumatic.
Yeah, I mean, I would put it down to like a knife crime scenario because it's such a prominent situation that we've got. But yeah, just if you're just supporting a friend who's going through a traumatic experience, what and how would you address that letter to them?
Okay.
And we're not going to necessarily read it out, but it's just a reflective exercise for you guys to be able to help gear us up
Thank you.
for when we're moving forward with our parent champions.
Yes, thank you, Liz.
Cool. Thank you. We're going to say something.
I was going to say thank you, ladies, for your I have respect for you. I know it's hard to you know, to get over things. Anyway, respect to both of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire.
Thank you.
Good one, Claire.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? As we've come to the end of Lydia and Kerry's presentation. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back, and I'm going to continue on with some of the mentoring skills. I just want to make sure at this point, has anyone got any questions, any thoughts, anything that you want to share in this space?
I just have a quick question. And you know, it says ACES and it says it leads to overeating, drinking, but it doesn't mention drugs. Is that just is that a thing?
I think when they say binging, I think it kind of relates to everything, because you kind of just go down that disruption, this destruction route of, you know, you're not caring about your mind, body and soul anymore, you know, so it kind of just all gets muddled up within that.
And also there is the statistic that 11 times people who have experienced 4 or more ACEs are 11 times more likely to have used illicit drugs as well.
Yeah.
Good question.
Thank you.
Good question, Claire.
Thank you.
Joelle, do you want to?
Yeah, I was going to say also thank you so much for sharing. Definitely like the strength in what both of you guys have said, and the way you turning your situations around to help others is very inspiring. And it had me thinking as well about ACEs, and like my upbringing was a very traumatic one as well. And it's like, I think in some cases, well, I could say in my case, for me, the way it came out, I tried to avoid situations to the point where it could actually be having an adverse effect on my life, in the sense of like anxiety around alcohol. Like I've never ever drank or got drunk because of like that fear of ever becoming that person kind of thing. So as much as like the statistics say like you're more likely to do these things, it's weird that in my situation I've come to a point where I'm actually the complete opposite, but to the point where it's like you kind of won't even let yourself free up, like you won't even let yourself go kind of thing. So I'll just say I'm just thinking about it, I just found it quite interesting that maybe I've actually gone the complete opposite direction to what the statistics are saying, if that makes sense.
I was very, very similar to Joelle, because, you know, knowing that my mum ended up being a crackhead and stuff like that, I was like, I definitely do not want to be smoking crack, you know. So I made sure, as I said, I had my 9 to 5 job. I had my my job from 6 till 1. I was doing everything to make sure I was not on the streets, vulnerable, not going to be on Shepherd's Bush Street, you know, one of them ones. Like,
I feel like it's like you put even more pressure on yourself not to be that version of like what you know is so easy for you to be. So in a way, it's like you're like, for me, I could say I've put a lot of pressure on myself to try and be sort of not that person kind of thing. But then in a way, it still just brings a whole nother sort of list of like just stresses and anxieties about sort of worrying about becoming, you know, that version of yourself that you don't want to be.
I guess if you're not getting the opportunity to do the work, you're not speaking about it, if you're not, you know, you feel isolated with that scenario, then it's going to end up, you know, having that effect. But if you do have the opportunity to speak about it and you get to try and heal through, you'll get to heal through those processes, you know. So either way, it can happen like that, but you still have the power to, once it's been brought to your attention now, and you know you've acknowledged it, you can work through whatever it is, you know, and also sharing, knowing that you're not alone, that other people go through these things. You get me? Cool. So I think that's done. What do you reckon, Sharon?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we could talk on, you know, and this is part of the journey, I think, as well. Again, you know, Kerry, Lydia, thank you so much. Everybody, round of applause again. So many powerful, I think, messages and words have come out of this presentation. My thoughts are, and again, this is something I do want to talk to the group about, is that for me, this workshop is very much a workshop that creates a great foundation for further conversations. And Joelle was a great example of that there, when she actually reflected back on her own journey and looked at how her own journey has impacted on who she is today. Does that make sense? So it's a brilliant foundation platform for so many conversations. So let's think about, as we undertake this journey as parent carer champions, you know, how else Lydia and Kerry and their journey, their workshop can be included and in lots of ways developed through this journey for us. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Lydia and Kerry.